where do I even begin? So we are excited to bring this 6-part series, Roadmap from Graduation to CFY. And we are going to share strategies for each step of the journey, from graduation day to that ultimate first day on your job in your CFY. So today we have the first episode here for you, and this is step-by-step resume building. And we brought in our favorite guest, known on Instagram as SLP Resume. This is Demi Fritz. She is, guys, truly our go-to expert on all things resume related. She's got her very own resume building company for SLPs, and she comes with a wealth of expertise and knowledge for that graduate student who is ready to put the pen to paper and build their resume. Welcome, Demi. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Yes, as Stephanie mentioned, I own SLP Resume. I started the business a few years ago because I saw the need for it. We literally had no resources, and I kept seeing resumes from business centers that just didn't really align with what we really needed out of resumes. So I did some research, and everything that you're going to hear today is my own personal research. So what I've done that's a little bit unique and kind of different is I've actually reached out to about 75 employers, graduate school administrators, just people in our field to find out what they actually want to see in a resume. So everything that you're going to see here today is not really on Google or searchable. This is just stuff that I've collected over the years, and I hope that you guys learned something kind of interesting today.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so it's unique. I love that it's unique. This is obviously your area. It sounds like you've done a lot of research and talked to a lot of different people about what the information is that you're sharing. So let's dive right in. I'm excited to hear some of those actionable strategies that grads to be or graduate students can implement into their resumes effective immediately right after this episode. Let's dive in.
Absolutely. I am going to share my screen with you guys. My PowerPoint presentation that you can have access to it on speechpathologypd.com. The handout is available there, so don't feel free like you have to write everything down. The handout is accessible and the PowerPoint's accessible, so you will just have to download it.
Yes. Great. So we can find that on speechtherapypd.com, correct?
Yes.
The handout. All right. Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Oh, clicked the wrong one. Sorry, guys. Okay, so can everybody see this? Yes. So let's talk about a little bit of resume components. So what should you be including actually in your resume as a new graduate, clinical fellow, prospect student? Okay, so first things first, let's talk about your headers. Education, honors. Now with honors, if you don't have space, this is one thing that you can kind of omit if you don't have the extra space. Yes, obviously employers want to see how successful you were and how smart you are, but they would also rather see your clinical experience instead. So if you need more space, that's the first thing I like to kind of play with and see if I can get rid of or move around. The next thing you're going to want to talk about is your clinical experience. Now, with this section, it is vitally important that you do not repeat anything in each description, okay? So by this, I mean, if you talk about collaboration in your school placement, you're not going to talk about collaboration in your hospital placement. You talked about it once, we can check the box, and we're going to focus on that skill and that one description. What this will do is it'll keep your reader engaged for a longer period of time and make them more intrigued by what you're bringing to the table. Next thing is related experience. So a lot of you have probably done a lot of work in the field of speech pathology, and by field, I mean anything related to children or adults. Maybe before grad school, you worked in a nursing home as a volunteer or activities coordinator. That's related experience. But here's my little thing. If you are applying to the medical setting, you're not going to include anything that has to do with pediatrics unless you're applying to a pediatric medical-based setting. But let's keep it simple: adult, medical, pediatric education, private practice, just for these purposes. If you're applying to a medical setting, you're not going to include anything pediatric in your related experience, okay? Keep it really, really specific to the setting that you're applying for. It's very important. keeps the reader, like I said, engaged, and it makes sure it allows you to create or have more space for things that are really relevant to the setting. Next thing, volunteer experience. I still think employers want to see this. I think they want to see you're involved in your community. They want to see that you're involved in some capacity. Maybe you were really involved with an organization before grad school. Obviously, grad school is very busy. So if you slipped up on this, don't panic, okay? But maybe include some of the things from undergrad, or just little things that you've done maybe throughout grad school. Certifications. To be clear, you are not expected to have a million certifications. That is not the expectation by any means, but a lot of you might get the modified barium swallow student certification. Maybe I know there's a loud crowd student certification. I know that there's a few like AAC ones, there's some pediatric ones. So you can get student certifications, but it's not the end of the world if you only have like one or two. It's okay. Any research you've done, and then sometimes I've had clients be SLPAs before they go to graduate school. So if those SLPAs have done professional development, so I always encourage you guys to include those development courses, or maybe at one of your practicums you had a professional development course that you had to attend. Include it. I think that looks really good. Okay, soft skills. Now, the crazy thing about soft skills is I feel like it's one of those things that's obvious, but are oftentimes left out. But if you demonstrate in your resume and your interview that you have strong soft skills, you are 75% more likely to get a job over someone who did not demonstrate those qualities.
Oh, so interesting.
I know. Thank you. This is from monster.com. So this is not my personal research. But this is a really good statistic that really shows the importance of these qualities. I do have a freebie on my website for this. If you sign up for my email template or for my email subscription list, you get this for free. And I think there's like 85 soft skills listed there. Lots of digging on soft skills. But it's really important to incorporate those into your resume. It really shows that the employer that you are going to be able to do the job well, not just because you're really smart, but because you can be on time, because you're organized, because you know how to connect with people. Those are all really important parts of our job as well. Okay. All right, other components. So evidence-based practices is one thing that people are often like thrown off by that I say to include. You guys, part of our job, a big portion of our job is including evidence-based practices into our therapy, right? So why wouldn't we do that in our resume too? So what I like to do is I don't overdo it either. Like I'd say maybe 3 to 4 evidence-based practices that are maybe like more well-known and incorporate them into your resume.
Can you give an example of one or two for the listeners?
One that I just did today, the person that I was working with uses the SOS feeding strategy, or so it's like sequential oral something. Sorry, I'm having like a brain moment. I can't remember the last line. But
so like would PECS be an example if you use picture exchange?
Yes. And actually, if you guys sign up with the stress-free resume with my services, you'll get a list of about 200 evidence-based practices and their correlated diagnosis. So you'll actually get to go through, there's a description for each one, and you can be like, oh, I did use that. I can use that here. Oh, I did use that. So it's a really benefit. It was a lot of work to make it. So it's free. It comes with the package. So it's one more thing that you're getting as part of that deal. As far as accomplishments, not responsibilities, this is my biggest error and my biggest pet peeve I see on resumes. So I offer free resume feedback, and I get between 8 to 12, sometimes 20 resumes sent to me per day for this free feedback. And this is by far the biggest error that I see on resumes, is focusing too much on those responsibilities and not enough on what you accomplished. Now, with still giving my clients like privacy and permission, like I'm not going to overshare about this just because this really goes into like my secret formula, my secret sauce. But basically, I want you guys to focus on what you did and how that affected something else versus just what you did. Okay.
Mhm.
So without getting too much specific, I feel like that's kind of the best way to describe it that I can.
So rather than maybe saying I was responsible for a caseload of X number, you could say I supported my caseload with accomplishing their goals in whatever
Yeah.
specific goals might be.
Yeah. You could say something like increased data collection methods by using rubrics, progress monitoring tools, and I don't know, observations. It's just you want to get as specific as possible. The more general you are, the more forgettable. So that's my kind of
Okay.
rule. Yeah.
Oh, I like that little more general, the more forgettable. Okay. Specific to be noticed.
Yes, specific is memorable. There we go.
Okay.
The next thing you're going to want to include in your resume is some percentages and data. How powerful is it for an employer to see that you've actually made progress with your clients? So without giving any client data or client information away, it might be a good idea to include some percentages or data that you've had in the past with a client that you've been successful with. Obviously, don't use one that maybe plateaued or didn't make as much progress. But if you have one that you're like, okay, I did a really good job on this one, go ahead and use one. Okay. And then cover letter template. So other components of a resume include a cover letter or a letter of intent. With the cover letter, I think that shows more of a personal side of you where the resume is more straightforward facts. So I always say to include a cover letter. I have one specifically for clinical fellows. So I actually made 3 different versions of it, one for clinical fellows, externs, and professional SLPs. So you have a lot of different options there to keep it going with where you are in your career.
You've been busy.
You have no idea.
Thank you so much for all of this. This is wonderful.
Of course. Okay. And then the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is business resume components that are different for SLPs. Now, like I kind of talked about at the beginning, it is really common for me to see a lot of people who've sent their resumes into a business center and then they send them to me and I'm like, ooh, this one is at a business center for sure. The key differences, and I'm sure there's more, but I was trying to think of things earlier and I don't feel 100%. So I feel like my brain's a little foggy today and I'm like, but this is just kind of, what I came up with today. So first thing, including an objective statement. To be honest with you, objective statements are really for business people and business resumes because when you send in your resume to a giant corporation, they are trying to figure out where you're going to go, right? So they almost need that objective statement to figure out, oh, she's applying for HR, oh, he's applying for the analytics center, he's applying for marketing, whatever it is. So they need that. But when you're an SLP, you have your C's or you have your CF SLP. That's your title. That's your objective statement. You want a job as a speech therapist. There's not going to be another job unless you want something different than a speech therapy job. Don't include an objective statement. It just takes up space and it adds 0 value to your resume.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That I did not know. There's actually a few tidbits I did not know about this, but I would not have guessed that. But that makes absolute sense.
Totally. So instead of an objective statement, I include what I like to call like a summary of skills. And this is really just a place to really highlight and showcase those soft skills that I talked about earlier. And so that's kind of what I use instead. I think that's just is way more powerful and it's like way more meaningful for the employer. The next thing that I see a lot from business center resumes are 1-page only resumes. Now, SLPs are hustlers. Okay. We work our butts off from undergrad to grad school to your clinical fellowship year. And 99% of the time, getting it all into 1 page, all of those clinical experiences, everything, it just doesn't always work. And I think we have this expectation that 1-page resumes are necessary. But to be honest with you, 1-page resumes are necessary for business people because they don't have as much experience as we do when we graduate from grad school. We have 3 to 4. I've had a girl with 7 clinical placements to fit onto a page. Like that's just not reasonable and not realistic. So I'm over the notion that 1-page resumes are the expectation for our field. I think 2 pages is absolutely more than enough and standard. I've had maybe out of the 40 something employers that I've talked to, like 2 say that they prefer a 1-page resume. So as long as you don't like repeat yourself a whole bunch, 2-page resumes are very standard and okay in our field.
Okay. Noted. That's a good one.
Yes. The next thing is black and white resumes. I personally like color. I think it makes your resume pop a little bit, and there's no harm to it. So you can kind of personalize it, make it a little more like pretty and eye appealing and catching. Business centers really encourage you to use black and white. But like I said, there's really no downside to using a little bit of color for our field, and it just brings a little warmth and happiness. And I even like to use specific colors because it coordinates with certain emotions. So I've done a little research on this because I'm kind of fascinated by this.
Oh, okay.
Blue is like a very like trusting and happy and warm color, and people really feel connected to it when they see it. So I often use blue. Same thing with like greens. They're very trusting, and relationship building is like the word that comes to mind for green. And so it's like, I'll use some greens, I'll use some blue. I don't do more than one color, just one color. But
because we have some creative SLPs out there that might be getting all these colors going.
There you go. Yes. So just stick with one color. If you're going to do blue, do blue. If you're going to do green, but that's kind of my advice for that.
Can I stop you there with one question for a second?
Absolutely.
With the black and white resume and incorporating a color? Do you recommend posting a picture? I've seen resumes sometimes where you see a picture of the individual, and then sometimes where people do not include that. And I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were on the picture component.
Such a great question, and I'm so glad you asked that. Under no circumstances should you ever include a picture. Now, the reason for this might surprise you, and maybe it won't, but if a person sees your picture on the resume and they hire you, or maybe they don't hire you, that's a liability for them or for you. So if they hire you based on what you look like in any capacity, or if they don't hire you based on what you look like in any capacity, there could be a lawsuit there. So I really like to encourage 100% people, do not put your photos on your resumes. You just don't want to get in a situation where maybe, you got hired because you're pretty, or maybe you got hired because you're, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even want to go into that, but like, you just don't want to do it. Okay. Go off your smarts, go off your intelligence, go off your work ethic. And you just really want to focus on all of that. So, okay, next thing. 1 to 2 bullet points per description. Again, this is a business resume tip that I feel like just doesn't do justice for SLPs. I like to do between 3 to 6, depending on how relevant the experience is. There's very few cases that'll do more than 6 because I feel like that's overkill, but 3 to 6 is kind of my sweet spot because I just feel like that really gives a good representation of what you learned and what you accomplished at that center or that experience. So 1 to 2 bullet points for clinical externships is not enough ever. Okay. Yes. And Stephanie, do you have any other questions before I move on to the next?
No, this is great. So these are the things that would be more business oriented. Yes. And we would do the contrast, all of the tips that you shared.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I do offer 2 different resume services. The first one is the stress-free resume, and we call it the stress-free resume because we literally take all the stress off of your plate. After you sign up, you'll get a really comprehensive questionnaire, and by comprehensive, I mean it will literally go into every possible detail that could be relevant on your resume. So you can feel really confident knowing that everything that could be of relevance is going to be on your resume. We also use our top secret formulas to create that resume. So like I told you guys, I did a lot of research on my own, and these are things that I've created from the research that I did. And so it's not Googleable. It's not things you're going to find or hear from your professors. These are things that I found from employers and graduate administrators and professors that I know and love. And they were so gracious to share all that information with me. Next thing, we also make sure that everything is really individualized to your needs. So every single sentence is rewritten and composed for your needs. Okay. So you're not going to see your same old resume on your new one. It's going to be completely rebuilt. Now, if you want something a little less comprehensive, but you still want to do some services, maybe you just need a little feedback, we have the stress less resume. And basically what I'll do is I'll go into your resume, make a whole bunch of feedback and edits and give you a ton of advice and examples, and you'll go in and actually make those changes. Okay. If you're starting from scratch, you can use the stress-free resume. But if you already have a resume, I offer this really great feature, which is the free feedback feature. So it's general, and don't be wrong, I read probably 2 sections of your resume and then I give you some feedback based on that. But I will give you some free feedback. I usually respond within 24 to 48 hours. You just click this link and it'll take you to the form. You'll attach your resume, see if you even need our services. A lot of people don't, because they're really got their heads on straight and they've got it, but some of them are like, I've never written a resume before in my life, and that's totally fine. That's what we're here for. Let me do the stressful part for you.
And is that link that you're talking about, when we go back, that link, is that available in the handout that you have uploaded to speechtherapypd.com?
Yep. So everything that's pink is a link. So everything that's pink in any of the slides will take you to the page on the website, and it should do the same thing in the handout version. If it doesn't, let me know. Yeah. I do have a special discount code for you guys for Speech PD. You can get 15% off your purchase. This is the highest discount code that I offer, even for sales, so take advantage of it. It's a really good discount. And just to give you some perspective, like, business-oriented resume services charge anywhere between $400 to $1,000 for basically the same thing that I'm doing, and I charge between $90 to $270, just depending on what package you want to do. But we really try to make it as affordable as we can to the SLP world, just because we want to make sure it's accessible and that everybody who wants to do it can. So we work really hard.
And because they're just starting out, they haven't even gotten their first paychecks yet, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So we really try to make it as cost effective as possible, just because we know that it's hard to come up with, some of that right when you're getting started. So we want you to get the best job you can, and we want to set you up for that. How to find me. Here's all my links. Like I said, everything in pink is a link. So
perfect. Okay. So you are on Instagram. Yep. You have your Facebook, and you do have your website, slpresume.com, for people to find you.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So, wow. So this has me wanting to go back now. And I mean, I've been in the field 16 years, and I was thinking, oh, this is great for new grads, but this is actually great for anybody who maybe has been away from the field and is coming back into the field, or has changed their focus, or maybe has just experience in one area, but has recently gotten new experience and want to modify their resume. I mean, this could be for anybody, what you're offering, really.
Absolutely. We have a lot of actually professional SLPs, exactly what you said, who are maybe coming back into the field, or they're shifting from one setting to another, and they're not really sure how their resume should look, or just somebody who wants an update, and, maybe they've been in the field for a few years, want to kind of get it refreshed. So it's always good to have your resume ready to go, for sure. You never know when a job is going to pop up that you want.
Absolutely. Well, this has been super helpful. So we have your tips and strategies. We have the contrast list of how to kind of go a different route than we would see in a typical business resume. You shared information about the headers, what to include in your resume. We've got some resources. We know a little bit about you now, a little bit more about you, and ways that you can take a deeper dive, if you want to take a deeper dive into resume building, how you can link up with Demi and the services that she offers, which is really great because she's an SLP. So she's an SLP and she has that services. So she's right in our field. And that is so very exciting. Thank you, everybody. I do want to touch on, right before we close off, because if you follow me on golden.state.slp on Instagram, I love all things mindfulness. So I'm always trying to figure out how we can sprinkle a little bit of mindfulness into each of the activities that we are doing. So I just wanted to point out some tips when you sit down to work on your resume. Some mindfulness strategies you could remember are Cleaning and clearing out your workspace so you can really focus on the present moment. Just remove any clutter, open up space for creative thinking, to work on all those great strategies that Demi has shared. You want to minimize any of those distractions, turn off your cell, minimize your computer while you're working on your resume building. I also recommend considering being very intentional about what you want to accomplish when you sit down. So take that checklist from Demi that she offers and say, okay, what one thing do I want to work on or accomplish today? Or today I want to complete this section of my resume. So having that intention. Also consider engaging in maybe a 2 to 3 minute grounding exercise just to come to the present moment before you sit down to work on that resume. You could do breath work, you could do meditation, informal or informal grounding practices. These are available online. You can also find examples on my Instagram, again at golden.state.slp. The last thing you want to do is consider sitting down, working on all these amazing strategies from Demi and working on building your resume if you're in an emotional place or if you're just feeling physically exhausted from your day. And lastly, I recommend coming up with a mantra or a positive affirmation. So basically, we can kind of transfer that positive energy right onto our resumes that we're working on. You really get those good vibes flowing, if you will, and you're bringing that self-compassion and that self-awareness to the present moment. So maybe you're thinking, your mantras could be, you know what, I am confident and I am educated. And as you're writing your resume, you're thinking, I am worthy. I am open to learning new things, or all that I need, I have inside me to do this right now. So remember, when you're taking those strategies from Demi or you consider working with her, make sure you consider setting a designated time, just a little writing block time in your workday. And remember when you're done working, just to give yourself some appreciation for what you did accomplish. Take a moment to appreciate all of your efforts, all of your hard work. Give yourself that pat on the back for the work that you have done and for the steps that you've taken along this journey in securing your dream job. As we close out, I want to share a quote that comes from Scott Shute. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, Shute. While he was a LinkedIn executive, he shared what makes for a self-aware resume in an article that was published in 2018. And he says, then there's a we component. And one of the biggest turnoffs for me when I'm interviewing people is if it's very me-centric. I did this, I did that. He said, of course, when you're writing a resume, it's hard not to do a bit of that. But you can also see how someone thinks about their accomplishments. What was the value they provided the company? What was the value that they provided their team or that they provided to their customers? And if they think that way, that shows compassion. And I think that touches on exactly what Demi was sharing with us today when she said, think about your accomplishments rather than just your responsibilities. So Demi, it sounds like you have the perfect strategies for the graduate clinicians that are looking to sit down and get the perfect resume ready that they're going to send out to their future jobs. So thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your time with us. We are right at the end of our 30-minute session. Again, everybody, there is a handout from Demi. Be sure to download that handout. I've also included a handout for mindfulness strategies, including some of the ones I mentioned today and others that you can keep in mind when you are building your resume. Thank you, Demi. It was great seeing you. And thank you so much for the value and your wisdom and all these golden nuggets you are offering to the speech field.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Stephanie, and Speech Pathology PD. I appreciate it. And have a great night, everybody.
Yes, absolutely. We loved having you here today. And for everybody else, speechtherapypd.com. That's where you're going to find this course. If you weren't here live, you can let all of your friends know. Go ahead over to the course library and check out that course as well. We will see you back here next week. We are taking the next step in our journey on our roadmap, and we will be stopping to talk about the job search. And we will be here with SLP Treva Graves. We will see you back here next week. Thanks, everybody.